A man who owned everything vanished overnight. But what found him under the palm trees was darker than wealth. Welcome to Tales by K. David Nkem was a man whose wealth stretched far beyond what the eye could see. His companies towered like giants over cities, and his name made even powerful men straighten their backs. But all his money could not quiet the storm inside him. For many months, David lived with a strange dread. A heavy fear that clung to him like a shadow that had learned to breathe. At night he woke with his heart pounding, convinced someone, or something, was watching him. His billionaire empire felt like a cage made of gold, and then came the dream. Night after night, a voice whispered in the dark, when wealth becomes your prison, flee to where your name has no echo. One sunrise, unable to bear the weight of that whisper, David gathered only a small sack, disguised himself in simple clothes, and walked away from everything. No entourage. No bodyguards. No traces. He traveled deep into the countryside until he reached a place few outside maps remembered, Umuabana, a village blessed with rich soil and proud traditions. But even as he stepped into the village square, something pricked the back of his neck, a feeling that he had been followed. When he turned, there was nothing. In the center of the village he met Mr. Jonathan, known to all as Papa Jon, a wiry old palm wine tapper whose eyes were sharp enough to slice through lies. "You," Papa Jon said, tapping his staff, "you run from something. Or someone." David froze. The old man chuckled. "Don't fear. Every man running from his past ends up under these trees." With nowhere else to go, David asked to live and work under Papa Jon. The old man agreed, but with a warning: the palms hide nothing. If you fear the truth, these trees will expose you. David did not know. The trees were already whispering, and between their rustling, faint footsteps followed him. Umuabana was a village where every face told a story, and every whisper carried a lesson. Yet among all the tales the villagers passed between themselves, one name carried a weight of admiration and fear: Sarah Ada. She was the type of woman whose presence made even the wind pause to greet her. Not because she was the most beautiful, though many would argue she was, but because she possessed a strength of character that few understood. She moved through the village with the confidence of a queen and the humility of a servant. And above all things, she detested pride, not the healthy kind that came from hard work, but the poisonous kind found in men who believed the world owed them something simply because they breathed. It was said that Sarah had rejected no fewer than 11 suitors, and each one left convinced that her heart was covered in iron, but only Sarah knew the truth. Her hatred of pride was born from experience. Years ago, she had loved a man, one whose arrogance had drained her heart dry. He walked as though the earth trembled for him alone. And when he broke her trust, the wound carved into her spirit a vow: never again would she give even a moment of attention to a proud man. Sarah rejects another suitor. That morning, the sun shone brightly upon Umuabana, laying warm golden fingers across the red earth paths. A line of villagers carried yams, palm fruits, and woven baskets to the marketplace. And there stood Sarah, fending off yet another arrogant admirer. He wore a newly sewn senator outfit and a smirk that refused to leave his lips. "Sarah," he said, flipping his shoulder proudly, "the elders say there is no better match for you than me. My father has land, my mother has wealth, and I—" Sarah raised a hand, stopping him mid-brag. "Your words smell louder than your perfume," she said softly. The villagers stifled laughter, the suitor's pride deflated like a punctured drum. She walked away without another word. Her kindness shows another. Later that afternoon, Sarah knelt beside the shallow stream, helping children wash mangoes. Their laughter echoed across the waters as sunlight danced on her skin. For all her firmness, Sarah's heart was kind, overflowing even. A child slipped, almost falling into the water. She caught him swiftly. "Careful," she said gently. "A river only laughs when you respect it." The villagers watching from afar nodded among themselves. Sarah Ada was firm. But she was good. The stranger who worked without complaint. When she rose to return to the village center, she paused. Her eyes caught sight of a man working under the tall palm trees with Papa Jon. She had seen him before from a distance, new in the village. Quiet, respectful. Still a mystery, David Nkem. He was dressed in simple clothes, his hands dusty, face glistening with sweat as he carried a tapping gourd and attempted to climb the palm tree for the third time. Papa Jon, with his white beard and sharp eyes, barked instructions at him. "Place your foot properly, boy. The tree will not bow for you." Sarah watched, surprised. Strangers usually tried to impress the villagers. But this man, he worked silently, humbly. Almost too humbly. Something about that humility pulled her attention like a magnet. Richard Chike's jealous entrance, but someone else noticed too. Richard Chike, tall, muscular, proud, and in Sarah's eyes. Everything she had sworn never to entertain again, he had admired her for years. She admired him for nothing. "Sarah," he said, stepping beside her with a confident grin. "You are looking, I am watching something," she cut in politely, eyes never leaving David. Richard followed her gaze. The moment he saw that she was looking at David, something dark flickered in his eyes. He folded his arms. "That one? That stranger? He will not last a week here." Sarah said nothing. Silence, sometimes, is sharper than words. Richard's jaw tightened. David's struggle and Sarah's softening heart. Under the palm tree, David tried again to climb. His feet slipped. He almost fell. Sarah gasped faintly, hand rising to her chest. Richard smirked. "See? Weak." But David did not give up. Again and again he climbed. And finally, he reached the top. Papa Jon struck the ground with his staff in approval. "Well done, boy." David exhaled in triumph, sweat shining on his skin. Sarah's lips curved into the slightest smile, not because he succeeded, but because he kept trying. Their first soft exchange, David returned to the path, breathing heavily. Sarah approached with a calabash of cool water. "You worked hard," she said softly. David looked startled. "Thank you." Their eyes met, longer than they should have, long enough for a spark to pass. Sarah felt her own heartbeat quicken. She turned away quickly, embarrassed by the warmth rising in her chest. Richard burns with jealousy. From behind a palm trunk, Richard watched them with clenched fists. His breath was hot with envy. His pride, his greatest weapon, was being shattered by a stranger who didn't even know the kind of enemy he was making. "This outsider will learn," Richard muttered under his breath, "that stealing what I want comes with a price." David's fear returns at night. That night, after the village fell quiet, David sat alone outside Papa John's small hut. The moon floated high above, silver and watchful. He touched his chest, remembering Sarah's smile, a blessing, and a curse, because somewhere, far away, in the world he had run from, someone might still be searching for him. He entered his hut and tried to sleep, but his dreams whispered riddles, his past prowled like a beast in the shadows, and in the quiet darkness of Umuabana, David realized something frightening. Peace could never protect a man whose secrets were louder than his heartbeat. Morning in Umuabana always carried a kind of sacred calm, dew clinging to the blades of elephant grass, palm trees stretching like ancient guardians, and birds calling out prayers before the villagers awoke. But this morning, someone new was struggling to fit into the rhythms of the land. David Nkem was learning the way of the palms. Papa Jon had woken him long before the sun fully rose, tapping his staff on the ground in a rhythm that seemed older than time. "Wake up, palm wine apprentice," he said, though the amusement in his voice could not hide the fact that he was testing the newcomer. David staggered out of the small hut, eyes heavy with sleep, body sore from the previous day's work. He had not climbed a palm tree before coming to this village, and his city-soft hands were now raw and tender. Papa Jon walked ahead, his steps light, far too light for a man of 67, yet David struggled to match his pace. The path led them through a thick grove of palm trees, their shadows moving with the wind like living spirits. The tapping tools clanged against each other as David carried them, trying not to trip over roots that seemed determined to embarrass him. When they reached the first tree, Papa Jon patted its trunk like greeting an old friend. "These trees," the old man said, "they smell fear. If your heart is not steady, they will show you no mercy." David swallowed hard. Papa Jon gestured toward the tall palm. "Climb," David tried. He failed. He tried again. He failed again. the bark scratched his palms, the height made his head spin, and sweat soaked his clothes far faster than he expected. Papa Jon watched silently, arms folded, expression unreadable. "Your legs are weak," the old man finally said. I'm trying," David gasped. "Trying is not climbing." David clenched his teeth. In his old life, people obeyed him. People bowed. People feared disappointing him. Now, one thin, sharp-tongued elder spoke to him as if he were a stubborn boy. So David tried again, this time breathing deeply, grounding himself the way Papa Jon showed him. He made it 1/3 of the way before slipping. He almost hit the ground, but caught onto a protruding bark. His heart pounded. Papa Jon didn't help him, he only raised his staff, again. David pushed himself upward, sweat dripping down his back, breath burning in his chest, and somehow, he reached the top, not with grace. Not with strength, but with pure, desperate will. He sat on the topmost frond, dizzy but triumphant. Papa Jon nodded once, approval that meant more than 1,000 praises, but in the bushes nearby. Someone had watched. Sarah Ada. She had come to the grove to gather some herbs for her stepmother when she saw the stranger fumbling his way up a palm tree. At first, she had chuckled behind her hand, he climbed like a frightened goat. But when he refused to quit, something about his determination pulled at her curiosity. Sarah moved closer, her raffia basket resting against her hip. Sunlight filtered through the palm leaves, catching on her braids and highlighting her soft but steady expression. Then, she heard footsteps behind her. "Why do you watch him like that?" A deep voice asked. Richard Chike stepped forward, tall, muscular, dressed in a fitted sleeveless shirt that showed off shoulders he was very proud of. His smile was confident, but his eyes were sharp with suspicion. Sarah didn't look at him. She kept her gaze on David. "I'm simply watching him learn," she said calmly. Richard's jaw tightened. He had chased her attention for months, but she remained unmoved by his strength, his wealth, or his charm. "He is just a stranger," Richard said. "Everyone is a stranger before they become someone," she replied. Richard's face darkened, but he said nothing. Meanwhile, David climbed down the tree, shaking, exhausted, but standing tall. Sarah stepped forward and offered him a small calabash of stream water she had carried. David blinked in surprise. "For you," she said softly. "To cool your body." David hesitated, unused to receiving kindness without cost, but eventually accepted. Their fingers brushed briefly. Sarah looked away quickly. Papa Jon cleared his throat loudly. "Are you here to help or to distract my apprentice?" Sarah held back a smile. "I only brought water, Papa." Richard glared silently, hands clenched. As David drank, something strange happened. For a moment, just a moment, he heard the whisper again, "Your past is close, closer than you think." He stiffened, eyes scanning the trees, but no one else seemed to notice anything out of place. The wind rustled the palm fronds with an eerie sigh. Papa Jon's eyes narrowed subtly. "You feel it, don't you?" The old man murmured so only David heard. "The palms hide nothing." David's stomach twisted. By midday, the village began to buzz with whispers. A new man was learning the ways of palm wine tapping, a stranger who climbed like he carried burdens heavier than the tools he held, a man Sarah Ada had offered water to, something she rarely did for any man. Some villagers smiled, others grew curious, a few grew suspicious, but Richard watched David from afar, jealousy stirring in him like a...
What happens next will shock you. Stay tuned for part 2. Please subscribe to my channel and turn on the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when it drops. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button and share it with your friends. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next part of the story.